Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. I do have a pretty big announcement at the end of today's episode, but getting right into the news, I did want to touch on these new rumors out of China about the upcoming more affordable vehicles. It's always very difficult to verify anything coming out of China, but they said the vehicle would cost anywhere from $20,000 to $28,000, and they ran through a list of features that would likely be removed from the current Model Y. Now, on the latter point, we've been saying for months that that's most likely what's going to happen, and we're going to find out the exact details here pretty soon. Since the current Model Y in China starts at about $36,000, that means they would be removing over $15,000 per vehicle, which would basically be double the 20% reduction that Elon had mentioned last year. Now, yes, Elon was talking about a 20% reduction in the cost of goods sold, not necessarily in the list price of the vehicle, but I'm just assuming that those stay in step to keep the margin the same. So if that were the case, reducing 20% from $36,000 would be just over $7,000. So dropping the price by more than double that to around $20,000 for a vehicle that resembles the Model Y seems too good to be true. I also wanted to add, historically, Tesla's pricing in China is roughly 15 to 20% cheaper than it would be comparatively in the United States, which means even if Tesla were to offer this new vehicle for about $29,000, it would likely be closer to over $34,000 in the United States. There was some drone footage from Met God in the Wilderness. People were saying it was a new two-door Tesla, but from anything that I've seen, I can't really draw any conclusions. And we've waited this long, so personally, I'm fine waiting another 8 weeks or so max to actually know for sure. On the tariff front, automakers have been pushing back, expressing their concern, and so today, Trump said that he'll soften the blow of his auto tariffs through an executive order, mixing credits with relief from other levies on parts and materials. They said this would work out to allowing automakers to import duty-free parts worth roughly 4% of the sticker price value of domestically produced cars they sell in year one and 2.5% in the second year, and then the benefit phases out in year three. So of course, this tier structure is a way to get companies to move parts production to the US. An auto industry letter was actually written by GM, Toyota, VW, Hyundai, and some others that was sent to the US Trade Representative. In that letter, they said most auto suppliers are not capitalized for an abrupt tariff-induced disruption. Many are already in distress and will face production stoppages, layoffs, and bankruptcy, noting it only takes the failure of one supplier to lead to a shutdown of an automaker's production line. Going to the source itself, we do find the 3.75 and the 2.5% for year one and year two. And then it says these percentages reflect the duty that would be owed when a 25% duty is applied to 15% of the value of a US assembled automobile in the first year, and to 10% of the value of a US assembled auto in year two. An example, if a manufacturer builds a car in the US that has 85% US or USMCA content, the manufacturer effectively will not owe tariffs on that vehicle's production for the first year. If a manufacturer builds a car in the US that's 50% US or USMCA content and 50% imported, then instead of paying the tariff on the full 50% of the imported parts, the manufacturer effectively only pays 35% for the first year. So for an example, in year one, Tesla gets a 3.75% credit offset. Assuming the MSRP on the Model Y is $45,000, that's about $1,687 per vehicle. But then Tesla would still need to pay 25% on the $6,750 of imported parts. That's from the 15% of $45,000. So 25% times that number is, guess what, $1,687. So for this Model Y in year one, the credit offset would equal the tariff that Tesla owes. So Tesla would pay $0 in tariffs on the imported parts for each Model Y. So the policy is really designed to offset the 25% tariff on 15% of the vehicle's value. And then in year two, Tesla would owe about $562 per vehicle. That's because the offset goes down to 2.5%. And then in year three, there would be no offset, so Tesla owes $1,687 per vehicle. And you can see here, I did not make up that 15% number. Tesla's Model Model Y has 85% total domestic content, but some Model 3 variants are below 75% domestic content. So maybe Tesla can source more parts from North America, but on the call, the team made it sound like certain parts just aren't and won't be made here. So I don't think that number for the Model Y ever goes over 95%. So in year 2, maybe Tesla's costs go up around $500 per vehicle, and we'll see if Tesla wants to pass that cost along to the customer, or they could decide to just take the margin hit. And then in year 3, the full impact would be felt since there would be 0% credit offset, and then the cost of a Model Y could go up between $1,000 and $2,000. So as we've said all along, Tesla is best positioned to handle this, but they're not fully immune. So doing some simple back of the napkin math to get an idea, if Tesla makes 500,000 vehicles in America this year and they would save about $1,600 per vehicle from these credit offsets, that means this policy would save Tesla about $843 million for this year. And yes, I know there are plenty of assumptions baked into that. Of course, not all vehicles Tesla sells in America this year will be the Model Y, and other variants will have a different credit offset and imported part profile. But I did want to highlight this policy is likely to save Tesla over $1 billion throughout year 1 and year 2. And again, not to gloss over it, but cars and other parts that are subject to these tariffs would no longer be subject to the other tariffs, like the 25% from Canada and Mexico, or the 25% on steel and aluminum, as well as the 10% applied to most other countries. Pam Bondi said, "We're pleased to announce federal charges against the Tesla attacker arrested in Arizona. These charges filed against Ian Moses, who misspelled thief and lit a Cybertruck on fire. And here's the proof. I don't know how anybody that went to grade school can leave without remembering I before E except after C." Kyle and Out of Spec shared the full keynote from Dan Priestley, giving us an update on the Tesla Semi program. The Semi factory is still targeting 50,000 units per year. Production will ramp throughout 2026, and initial vehicles will be going into Tesla's own logistics operations. The current pilot fleet has accumulated 7.9 million miles, with 26 vehicles exceeding over 100,000 miles each. Dan shared some new improvements, like a new MCS charging inlet that's capable of 1+ megawatt charging and a more efficient battery. Tesla's also developing a public charging network with 46 sites, and at these locations they'll have 300+ megawatt capable posts starting this year. And of course, 300 posts on the low side divided by 46 locations is about 6 to 7 posts per location. And as you would expect, these new 46 charging locations will be located along truck routes and in major industrial areas. The new 1.2 megawatt V4 charging hardware does share components with the passenger car superchargers, which obviously helps with economies of scale. And they're also introducing the ePTO, which is the electric power takeoff. This will basically power trailer equipment like refrigeration units. On this ePTO, it'll have a peak capability of 25+ kilowatts, but Tesla is seeking feedback on additional equipment needs from potential customers. He confirmed again there will be 2 models, a 300-mile standard range and a 500-mile long range. No surprise, he touted Tesla having best-in-class range, weight, and efficiency among electric trucks. There's a new mirror design with better sight lines and aerodynamics, and he mentioned 7%+ efficiency improvements, which create a positive feedback loop of cost and weight reduction. And he emphasized that Tesla was sourcing the battery cells domestically. And Tesla's megawatt charging solution will have a 50% smaller footprint than the current semi-charging equipment. They're also developing an integrated overnight charging product for different duty cycles, and Dan reassured the industry that these products will be available at compelling prices. So as we've been saying, Tesla will not be sitting still as the Semi factory is built. They'll continue to test and iterate and talk to customers and develop new features for the official rollout, still on track for next year. Washington State has passed a new law that will impose a tax on ZEV credit sales. The governor has not signed it yet, but the expectation is that he will. Under this law, ZEV credit sales will be taxed at a 2% rate based on the sale price. And then ZEV credits held for future use will be taxed at 10% of the average market value. Despite Tesla's objections, Washington lawmakers move forward with the bill aiming to level the playing field between established EV manufacturers and traditional automakers still transitioning to EVs. And this will, of course, primarily hurt Tesla the most because they generate the most ZEV credit sales. Remember, Tesla earns these credits for selling EVs, and these can be sold to other manufacturers who fall short of Washington's ZEV mandates. This tax applies only to automakers that bank or sell more than 25,000 ZEV credits per model year. So another example to make this understandable, let's say Tesla sells 50,000 EVs in Washington this year. That would generate roughly 50,000 ZEV credits. Maybe Tesla sells 25,000 of those and banks the other 25,000. Given that Washington follows California's ZEV program, let's say the average price per credit is $3,000. And obviously 50,000 credits does indeed exceed the 25,000 credit threshold, so the taxes do apply. 25,000 credits at $3,000 a pop is $75 million. A 2% tax on that is $1.5 million. Then for the banked credits, it's a 10% tax, which works out to $7.5 million, so Tesla's total tax liability would be about $9 million. Again, these are just estimates and back of the napkin math to get us in the ballpark. Obviously, this bill would incentivize automakers to sell more of their ZEV credits rather than banking them given the lower tax rate. But to do that, you need a buyer. So maybe Tesla could increase the price of these ZEV credits sold in Washington to offset their tax bill. Or maybe Tesla decides to sell fewer credits in Washington to avoid the tax altogether. So okay, $9 million, definitely not the end of the world for Tesla, but if you had another 10 to 15 states that were to also adopt a policy like this, then it would start to be a bit more impactful. It should go without saying, but do I think this is completely backwards, that Washington is penalizing a company that's been spearheading this initiative to push forward sustainable energy that these same folks were championing just a few years back? Yes, I do. Today is the day you're going to learn a bit more about who I am, but before I get into that later, I get a fair amount of questions asking about AG1's research. But look, it's really not hard to find. Just go to their website and up top, you'll find research. Now yes, AG1 is the sponsor of this video, but you can find whatever you're looking for right here. We've talked about this one. In clinical trial results, AG1 was shown to enrich the gut microbiome, more than doubling the levels of healthy bacteria. And let me tell you, as somebody who's dealt with a parasite, I cannot express how important it is to take care of your gut biome. With these in vitro study results, AG1 was shown to improve key markers of gut health with a 44% increase in short-chain fatty acid production. It also showed over a 9x increase in serotonin production in the gut. The powder form of AG1 was seen to digest faster than a multivitamin tab, with over 4 times more minerals available for absorption. And in an observational study at 1 month, 80% of participants noticed less gas and bloating, and 85% of participants noticed their bowel movements were more regular. And maybe this part is what some were missing, but if you scroll down further, you can actually find the peer-reviewed research. And you can go and directly read any one of these papers that you'd like. People ask me about heavy metals, and they say right here, AG1 is tested to make sure the levels of heavy metals are below the guidelines set by the USP and the NSF. So there you go. And as always, a huge thank you for supporting the channel in this way. And if you haven't yet tried it and you'd like to get some free travel packs and a 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2, you can head to drinkag1.com/electrified linked below, or you can use the QR code on the screen. Cheers. The weekly Tesla China number came in at 10,300. Compared to the same week in Q1, that number was 6,700. So quarter over quarter, Tesla China is now down 13%. And week 4, quarter 2 last year was 14,860. So now year over year, Tesla China is down 7.4%, but year to date, we're effectively flat, up 0.8%. The breakdown for the week, 3,200 Model 3, 7,100 Model Y. Tesla released its autopilot safety report for Q1, saying they recorded one crash for every 7.44 million miles driven, in which drivers were using autopilot. For those that were not using it, they recorded one crash for every 1.51 million miles driven. And zooming out to all cars in the US, there was a crash roughly every 702,000 miles. But again, we've talked in the past about some of the limitations of this data. It's still a mystery to what level this data includes FSD miles. The one thing I wanted to say was to caution comparing this data to quarter 4 because this is typically very seasonal. Think about the weather. So rather than comparing Q1 to Q4, you really want to compare Q1 to Q1 last year. And from that perspective, Tesla's data is basically in line, but the Tesla vehicles not using autopilot actually had a materially higher accident rate not using autopilot technology. I know plenty of people were fired up yesterday hearing Joseph Gebbia, a Tesla board member, bought $1 million of Tesla stock. And yes, this was the first time in the last few years that a quote-unquote insider has purchased Tesla stock. But let's not get crazy because Robin Denholm is still selling her Tesla stock. But I stand by what I've been saying all along. I very rarely put any stock into these insider transactions. I know these public net worth figures are typically off and sometimes by orders of magnitude, but if he is worth around $8 billion, a $1 million investment isn't really anything to write home about. So is it true that buying is better than selling or not buying? Yes, of course. But I think the problem here is most people are hoping that Joe has some inside information and is expecting Tesla stock to take off. But if that was the case, you would think he would put down a more substantial amount. All I really wanted to say was I don't need Joe Gebbia or really even Elon buying Tesla stock to give me conviction in the stock because I've done my homework over the years. And hopefully all of you can say the same. Something to watch, there's been a new bill proposed in New York that would end Tesla's license to sell directly in the state. Now, lawmakers want to pool Tesla's 5 permits for its retail outlets where it's been able to sell direct to consumer, and they want to offer those to other EV companies. To add to this absurdity, Patricia Fahey said, Elon's part of an administration that's killing all the grant funding for EV infrastructure, killing wind energy, killing anything that might address climate change. Oh, by killing, do you mean the one company single-handedly pushing forward sustainable energy? It's like, my goodness, I can't even believe some of the things that I read sometimes. Not only that, but they want the state to audit Tesla's deal for its Buffalo Gigafactory. They want the subsidies returned and for those managing the state and city pension funds to get rid of any investments in Tesla. If this were to be passed, Tesla would still have showrooms, it's just customers would have to place an order online and then drive out of state to pick up their vehicle. If this was passed, I would imagine Tesla has to have some sort of legal recourse. I mean, to me, it's pretty blatant. This is just political targeting. And the last update we got, Tesla said that it had met all of its obligations for the Gigafactory in New York. To make this even more laughable, the governor just announced $30 million to lease or purchase an EV in New York. This to continually fund their Drive Clean rebate program. So the state is clearly pushing for EV adoption, but at the same time, they're also doing whatever they can to stop Elon and Tesla, the one company doing the most for the EV revolution. Long time no see. I'm going to keep this brief, but what I'm about to say has been 3 years plus in the making. Before I get into this though, I want to be very clear, nothing is going to change with Electrified going forward. I've been working on both of these projects in tandem now for quite some time. And I have very strong conviction that Tesla's next 3 years are likely to be the most exciting in the company's history. So I don't have any plans on not covering that and then some. So with that important context out of the way, I have co-founded a company and will be bringing a physical product to market later this year. It's actually an awesome story. This is in partnership with an Electrified subscriber. And it has been and will be just the two of us that are working to make this product a reality, and I genuinely believe this can transform millions of lives and how they think about this key aspect of life. So yes, of course, I would love your support, even if it's just occasionally engaging with our content. And as I've done with Electrified, I'll do everything I can to ensure I'm not wasting anyone's time, to make sure I'm delivering as much value per minute as possible. And any financial outlay you have through one of my ventures, I really want you to have an excellent ROI. And this next venture is relevant to everyone, so it really broadens the scope outside of just Tesla. And if you're a human, I'm confident I'll be able to add at least some value to your life with what I'll be talking about. Our company will be focused on community, and along the way, I do plan to share everything I'm learning about crowdfunding and manufacturing and bringing a physical product to market. Again, in an attempt to be as valuable as I can, making this journey educational, informative, and hopefully enjoyable. And I really believe we have something special that can save people a lot of time and money and truly improve the quality of people's lives. And what's great is that ultimately, if this product really isn't for you, our content is going to go far beyond just that. So here's the video explaining exactly what we've been up to and what we have coming. So I hope you all at least go check it out real quick. And of course, I would love to see all of you over there in future episodes too. But more importantly, I just wanted to take this time to say thank you to each and every one of you that have watched my videos, left comments, liked the videos, supported me by checking out the sponsors on Patreon, over on X. It really is all of that support that has paved the way to allow me to take a shot like this. And as I like to say often to my family and friends, as long as I'm breathing, I'm going to be building. So again, thank you guys for everything. I truly will never be able to thank you enough. And one more time, to be clear, nothing is changing with Electrified. I plan to be around for the long haul.